Hi everybody, today we are going to talk about API. What is the API sound? What goes into it? And man, I have some cool stuff to look at today. So I've got this rack of 515 API preamps that were pulled out of an old console, a 512 from a 500 series rack, and I'm so excited to get into this. I'm going to take the lid off of this, and then I'll be right back with you. Let's look at the front panel of the 515s first, because there's a lot to see here, because this was pulled out of a console, so there were a lot of features. But since this has been racked up as a mic preamp, really most of this is just not relevant to what we're talking about, meaning the pan pots, the switches for all the bus sends and stuff. It's really this mic preamp control here and these switches, and that's really where the sound is going to be in this module. Man, while we're here, I just want to say I just love the API look. And I also props to them for basically keeping it the same for 50 years. Who does that? But the kind of these knobs are so unique, and the high contrast of the white on black is so good. It makes me think about how, when we talk about the API sound, people often use words like punchy, aggressive, mid-forward, and when people talk about the Neve sound, it's more like woolly, warm, larger than life, that kind of thing. And since we're such susceptible creatures to suggestion, I can't help but think sometimes that the look of API versus Neve has something to do with it. I mean, don't these just look punchy to you? Something about these little knobs and the high contrast to me looks punchy, and Neve's kind of rich blues and tan, that looks warm to me. So who knows? I'm just throwing a pet theory out there. But let's turn this over, so I'll shut up about that and look at the inside. So beautiful chassis wiring. One thing to point out immediately is API from the beginning, so modular, so clever, and so clearly thought out. They had this EDAC card edge connector, which is the same exact one that you'll find in the 500 series today. So, I mean, that's incredible. Think about that. You create a system in 1968 or whenever Saul Walker would have been working on this, and you're still using it 50 years later. That really takes foresight. So same connectors here. These modules plug into this card edge. It looks like these modules have basically all the active circuitry. And then this is just the output transformer for each channel, which is wired directly to the output jacks back here. So I'm going to pull out one of these cards and we'll get down to the circuit level. But let's keep in mind that the output transformer will not be on these boards. It's already over here. Okay, let's take a look. So we've pulled out a single channel of the 515 here, and I also want to bring the 512 into the picture so we can look at these together and see really how little has changed between them. So this 515 is two pieces like this. Well, let's just pause here and admire this. I mean, what I love about these old circuit boards is that this is, this ain't CAD, baby. This is hand-drawn, and so there was no... One of the big things in circuit board layout, if you've ever done it, is that the program knows what's supposed to connect to what. And so it won't really let you connect the wrong things. There's no such kind of like training wheels here. They just had to draw the circuit and make sure it was correct. And I just love that look. You just can't really do that in CAD. And also the API logo here in copper, so cool. And how great is that? Little transformer poking through. They had to route this hole because the transformer was tall. So, okay, let's just kind of see what we've got going on here. Here is the famous 2520 discrete op amp. That is the heart of the circuit. We'll get more into that in a minute. This is the input transformer. And then all of our switches, these are what's called shadow style push button switches, still very much in use. And then get a hold of this. That is a tropical fish capacitor. It's a Phillips Mullard capacitor. I believe it was polyester. Just 100% style goals right there. That is, I just love those. The painted lines. Sorry, I'm not getting a good view of it. The painted lines on that are so cool. And then here's our volume control in the form of a potentiometer. But I mean, there's not much going on here, folks. Like this is not super complex. Now let's look at the 512 just to compare. So the 512, which way am I going? Okay, so similar looking thing, input transformer. Here's the 2520 op amp. This one does not have a can on it. And then the output transformer, which remember is wired to the chassis for the 515. And this one has the input pot, same style of switches there, look a little different. And then this one has a DI and a separate mic input. But basically, audio-wise, we're talking about the same elements. Don't be fooled by these ICs here. These are just for the meter. They have nothing to do with the sound of the unit. So, as you can see, very similar between these two units, and also just not that much going on. There's really three main elements: the input transformer, the DOA, and the output transformer. So let me just, if I were to draw a block diagram of this thing, it would basically look like this. This is our input transformer. Comes in balanced, comes out of the input transformer unbalanced, goes to the 2520, and then it goes down, oh God, I'm sorry, I'm terrible at this, to an output transformer. And that's it. That's the API magic. I mean, that's not the magic, but any magic there is contained in this, because this is not just the circuit in the preamp. This is the circuit in the EQs, in the compressor, in anything that API did or does is based on transformer balanced input and output with a 2520 for the gain. And a 2520 is an operational amplifier. So let's just break down the 2520. Well, I'm just going to add a little black box here and call this gain. So the 2520, being an operational amplifier, has variable gain, which is set by the potentiometer, aka this thing. And that's really all there is going on. The resistors you see are to kind of load this transformer, to stop it from ringing, to make sure that the right power gets to the op amp, to set the gain of the op amp. And then there's some capacitors to kind of block DC where we don't want it. But that's all really housekeeping stuff. The main thing is just input transformer, 2520, output transformer. Okay? So pretty dang straightforward. What is the deal with this 2520? The 2520 is a discrete op amp. So in 1968, 1970, when Saul Walker was designing these things, the operational amplifier was a pretty new thing, and they made them in little chip forms, but those weren't very powerful. And you needed a powerful amplifier here, because let me go back to the 512. If our audio path is input transformer, DOA, output transformer, I'm saying DOA for discrete op amp, this has to drive this transformer and then the outside world. This is a step-up transformer, so suffice it to say that this has to drive what we would call a pretty heavy load. And a little chip from 1970 is just not going to cut it. It's going to distort and then blow up. So they had to make their own op amps, which are modular. You can pull them out like this, with these big power transistors on them. And that's really why they made the 2520. People talk about the 2520 now as if it's some kind of like magic distortion color box. I mean, I'm probably the most guilty of this. We have a DOA color module, and it can be made that way. But I went through a whole lot of marketing materials for these API consoles to research this video, and not one time does it say anything about color. It boasts low distortion, high output level, ability to drive any piece of equipment. And so that's what they were designing for. That's kind of the irony of a lot of this vintage gear, is that they were making it as transparent as possible with what they had. And what they had was, not all that much. So they had to, necessity is the mother of invention. They had to roll their own op amps, and partially because they did such a great job, and partially because of the accidental fact that it became such a popular console, people fell in love with the sound, the discrete op amp has persisted till today. Now, you'll notice these are different. To be honest, I'm not sure if this one is an API. I've never seen an API one without a can like this, so this is probably some sort of DIY version. But the 2520 said where the API headquarters was on it. And this one says Farmingdale, New York. Other ones say Huntington. There was the period in which they were API Datatronics. So there were just several periods of the 2520 that underwent multiple revisions because, remember, they weren't trying to emulate some sort of vintage sound. They were trying to make the best op amp they could, so they just kept revising it and revising it. And people have opinions on which one sounds best and which one sounds the juiciest, this one's the cleanest, whatever. But the main takeaway is that the API kind of topology is very simple, and it's really based around their signature discrete op amp. I mean, this part of what's incredible to me about this is how committed they were to modularity and how smart that was to make basically the entire active part of their all their circuits modular, easy to repair, easy to upgrade. And so if you'll recall back in the Neve, the Golden Age Preamp 73 video, I said how that is a very complex looking preamp. There's a lot of transistors, the switching is very complex, and this is very simple. And I stand by that. You have a single potentiometer controlling a gain for a single op amp. But it's not quite so simple because when we look at the op amp, we see it as one thing. And it's really not. It's 9 transistors in this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 transistors in this revision, which is actually the same number that is in the 1073 preamp, but it's just contained in this cute modular case. So it just makes it simpler to tech, to design, to repair, as I said. So that is the deal with the API sound. So where is the sound in here? Where's the magic? It's the transformers are just not as perfect as they could be made now, especially the input transformer. If you fed it too much voltage at the input, you could really get that to overload. Nowadays, a lot of API preamps have an attenuator on the output, but back in the day, it would actually have been pretty difficult to overdrive this 2503 output transformer. I know because I've tried to design a color module with one, and you really need to get way, way above line level before this thing starts to saturate, which is exactly what happens if you have a kind of newer API style preamp that often has down here a trim control. So but what you would basically be doing is turning the gain of this 2520 way, way up so that you can reach the saturation point of this transformer. And then you're patting it down so you don't clip your converters or tape machine or whatever. And so the 2520 as well, when it's working really hard, will also, I mean, these transistors will reach their limits. As I said in the Neve video, with fewer transformers, they all have to work harder so you get more color. And 9 transistors is not a lot of transistors for an amplifier. Yeah, so that's the gist of the API. You know, simpler perhaps than you would think. And if you can even read at all what's going on here, this is a block diagram, but it's also pretty darn close to the full schematic of the preamp. You would just kind of flesh out these things with actual resistors instead of a black box. But there you have it. That's the API circuitry. What fun to be able to tear down an actual console module. Hope you enjoyed this.